Hey everybody, this is Greg with Medical Muscle, and I thought I would break down each exam that you'll face in Term 4 at St. George University. So Term 4 is hard, and it's because it's kind of a recap, but it's fast. Okay, it's like some review of some old stuff, but then a lot of new stuff, okay? So the first exam is FTCM, Fundamentals to Medicine. So a lot of the same stuff you've covered before with cholinergic, adrenergic, antagonist, agonist drugs for the heart, and all the other systems that they interact with. It's a recap of the drugs. You've seen them, so it's not like a huge learning curve. Some new things though, NSAIDs, opioids, arthritis medications, autoimmune medications, things like that. So just a lot of drugs. Another big thing in Block 1, the FTCM, is the skin and muscle bone infections. That got weird. I'm gonna say that was somewhat challenging because a lot of these things kind of mesh together. There's not much that separates them, so it took a lot to try to figure out how to distinguish one from the other, okay? And how in a STEM, how can you separate the two? It's about 5 weeks. It's hard. It's a shock to your system, especially if you've been on any kind of break. It's like, boom, here we go. Here's a big block, okay? So that's the first exam. The second one was CRS, so the cardio-renal system. Pretty basic, you know. It's a lot like your cardio and renal blocks in Term 1, just kind of a recap of that. But again, they're adding in a lot of drugs, so you get arrhythmia drugs, other kind of drugs that have to do with the heart, diuretics, stuff you've seen before, nothing too crazy, and just kind of a recap on the kidneys. Maybe a little bit of pathology thrown in there, and that was kind of nice to break up from the drugs. But then again, sometimes the drugs were easier. So it's drugs and path, and you're just kind of learning these things hand in hand, which is kind of nice. Okay, the third exam is the RHS, respiratory and hemopoietic system. So you're learning pulmonary pathology. So again, a little bit from Term 1, but now we're gonna mix in like different pathologies, okay? So congenital, things that develop over time. It's interesting, and it's actually somewhat easy, I thought. It's just a lot, and it's hard to kind of suss these things out. All right, and the last block, I gotta say, is probably, let's say this, it's hard, but it's also, it's hard because it's long. It's 6 weeks, okay? It's a big mother. But the concepts are not that challenging, and I found that the drugs made quite a bit of sense. So it's the Durs. So you have digestive, endocrine, and reproductive. So you learn a lot of the same GI pathology that you've kind of covered in Term 2, but then they expand on a lot of that stuff, adding in drugs. So like how do you treat IBS? How would you treat Crohn's? Things like that. Then you go into endocrine, which for me, I felt like was very much a recap of Term 2. A lot of the same concepts. It was pretty easy. The drugs were pretty easy to understand. There's just a lot. It's 6 weeks of material, so it's a lot of stuff. And then the last block was the reproductive system, so some of the infections, your STIs, things like that. So all in all, I think it was a hard term. A lot of the content was really heavy, but I think you guys can handle it. I think these blocks are not crazy. Now, there were little SOAP assessments as we went through the term, so you have to pretend to write, you know, you're doing you have a fake patient and you have to take their history and write a SOAP note. There was a couple of those. They're kind of small point things. They're not as bad as you'd think. Okay, you're under time, but I think the practice that you get while you're in the term can help you really smooth that out. There's also a fake patient encounter. You have 2 of them at the end of the term. A lot of people stressed about them. I don't feel like they need a ton of practice. You know, if you're participating in small group, which you should, okay, if you're participating in these clinical encounters, then that's your practice right there. So really, when you're getting close to the end of the term and you're you're studying for this stuff, it should just be light review, okay? Like how do you do certain how to do certain physicals on the patient, how to ask the right kind of questions, and to figure out what they have. So I hope you guys kick butt. I hope you just dominate Term 4, because it's a big block and it does weed a lot of people out. I mean, a big chunk of my class did not do very well, but again, some people did very well too. So you guys can be that group. So good luck, kick some butt, and I'll see you soon.